Welcome to English Before Sleep. Tonight, we are going to spend a quiet evening by lake. We are friends, a warm campfire, and a few stories from their lives. If you enjoy this kind of calm English practice, please like the video, get comfortable, and let us begin this new episode. You do not need to study hard tonight. Just listen, relax, and enjoy the sound of English. It is late in the evening. The forest is quiet now. The trees move slowly in the wind, and the lake beside the camp reflects the last light of the sky. A small fire burns between 5 friends. There is Bob, who always seems to have a strange story ready. There is Daniel, who likes simple plans and very warm coffee. There is Mike, who laughs at almost everything, especially at himself. There is Emma, who notices little details that other people often miss. And there is Lily, who can turn an ordinary day into a story worth remembering. They have been talking for a while, but the conversation has become quieter. The fire is warm, the air is cool, the lake is almost completely still. Tonight, they decide to do something simple. They will tell each other stories. Not big stories, not famous stories, just real moments from their lives. Funny moments, embarrassing moments, warm memories, and one story that none of them has completely explained until now. For you, this is not only a night by the fire. It is also a gentle English listening practice, so you do not need to understand every single word. Listen slowly, notice the rhythm. Let the story move naturally. And if you are already in bed, you can simply relax. The fire makes a soft sound. The lake is quiet, and the first story is about to begin.
Okay, who wants to go first?
Not me,
You always say that.
because it usually works.
It never works.
Bob looks ready. I am always ready.
Bob smiles, moves a little closer to the fire, and looks at the dark trees behind his friends. His story is funny, but it begins with a problem that looked much bigger than it really was.
Alright, I will tell you about the day I tried to become a very serious runner. This happened a few years ago on a Saturday morning. I woke up early. Very early. That was already a bad sign. I looked at my phone and saw 6:30. I usually do not see 6:30 on Saturday. On Saturday, 6:30 is part of the night, but I had a new idea. I wanted to become healthier. I wanted more energy. I wanted to be the kind of person who wakes up early, drinks water, puts on running shoes, and goes outside with a smile. So I stood in front of my mirror and said, "Today I become a runner."
That sounds serious.
Very serious. I even wore a headband.
I heard band.
Yes, a black headband. I thought it made me look fast. Did it? No. It made me look like I was about to wash a car.
I can imagine it.
I left my apartment at 7. The morning was beautiful. The streets were quiet. The air was cool, and the sky was light blue. I felt great. For the first 5 minutes I walked. Then I started running. At first, I ran very slowly. But in my head, I was an Olympic athlete. I was thinking, look at Bob. Look at this discipline. Then, after about 3 minutes, my legs started saying something very different. They said, "Please stop." I ignored them. I ran past a bakery. The smell of fresh bread was amazing. I told myself, do not stop. Champions do not stop for bread. Then I stopped for bread.
Of course you did.
Of course. I bought one small warm roll. I ate it outside the bakery and told myself it was a healthy breakfast. It was bread. Exactly. Bread is not a problem. Running after the bread was the problem. After that, I decided I needed a better plan. I opened a running app on my phone. It asked me how far I wanted to run. I saw numbers like 3 kilometers, 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers. I chose 5.
Why 5?
Because 10 looked scary. 5 looked like a number a serious person can handle. The app started. Run begins now. I ran. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 3 minutes. Then I saw a small hill. The hill did not look difficult, but when you are tired, even a small hill becomes a mountain. I reached the bottom and thought, okay, Bob, you can do this. I ran up. Halfway up, I slowed down. Then I walked. Then I stood still. A minute later, I looked around. Nobody was there. So I did something very mature. I pretended I had stopped to look at the view.
Did you have a view?
No, there was a parking lot.
Amazing view.
Beautiful. Cars. a wall, one angry bird. Anyway, I continued. At the top of the hill, something unexpected happened. I felt good again. The wind was cool. The city looked far away. I could see the roofs, the trees, and a long road going toward the river. For a moment, I felt proud. I thought, maybe I really can do this. Then my phone made a sound. The battery was almost dead. 8%. I laughed. Fine, I said. I do not need an app. I can run without technology. That was true. What was not true was my confidence. I followed a path toward the river. I had never been there before. The path became smaller. There were trees on both sides. I kept running. Then I heard something behind me. Footsteps. I stopped. The footsteps stopped too. I looked back. Nobody. I started walking. Footsteps again. I stopped. Again, silence. Now I was thinking about every scary movie I had ever seen. I turned around quickly, and there it was. A dog. A very small dog. It was looking at me.
The dangerous creature.
Exactly. The dog walked toward me very slowly. It had a red ball in its mouth. I looked at the dog. The dog looked at me. Then the dog dropped the ball at my feet. I picked it up and threw it. The dog ran after it. And that became the next 20 minutes of my serious running workout. I threw the ball. The dog ran. I walked. The dog returned. I threw the ball again. Eventually, the dog's owner came down the path and apologized. He said, "Sorry, he likes new friends." I said, "No problem. He is a better runner than I am." The owner laughed. The funny thing was that talking to him made me forget that I was tired. We talked for a few minutes. He told me about the path and showed me a small bridge nearby. After he left, I crossed the bridge. I reached the river. The sun was higher now. The whole place was bright and quiet. I sat down, and I realized something simple. I had started the morning because I wanted to become a different person in one day. I wanted to wake up early, run 5 kilometers, and suddenly become healthy and disciplined. But real change does not happen in one morning. Sometimes you walk. Sometimes you stop. Sometimes you eat bread. Sometimes you play with a small dog for 20 minutes, and that is okay. I checked my running app. It said I had to run 1.8 kilometers.
5 kilometers.
1.8.
You were almost there.
Very close.
Did you run again the next Saturday?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. How far? 2 kilometers.
Progress.
Exactly. And I still have the headband.
Do you still wear it?
Only when I wash the car.
The group laughs softly. The fire moves and sends a few bright sparks into the dark air. Bob leans back. His story is simple, but somehow it leaves the group in a good mood. Sometimes a small failure becomes a warm memory. Sometimes the best part of a plan is the part that was never planned. For a moment, nobody speaks. The lake is almost silent. Then Lily takes a slow breath and looks at the water.
I think I have a story too. And mine is about a train. It was late autumn. I was 20 years old and I was traveling alone for the first time. I was going to a small town near the mountains. I had never been there. I knew nobody there, and I was excited. My train was supposed to leave at 6:15 in the evening. I arrived at the station at 5:45. I thought I had plenty of time. I bought a sandwich. I bought a bottle of water. Then I sat down and looked at the people around me. There was a family with 2 children. There was an old couple. There was a man reading a book. There was a woman talking quietly on the phone. Everything felt normal. Then I looked at the screen. My train was delayed. 20 minutes. I was not worried. 20 minutes later, it was delayed again. Another 20 minutes, then another. At 8 o'clock, I was still at the station. I started to think about going home, but then the train arrived. I got on quickly. The carriage was warm. The lights were soft. Most of the seats were empty. I found my seat by the window. I put my bag above my head and sat down. The train began to move. I looked outside. The station became smaller. The lights of the town moved past the window. I felt happy again. This was the part I loved about traveling. That first moment when you are moving away from home and do not know exactly what the next few hours will bring. After about an hour, I realized something. My phone had no signal. That was normal on some parts of the route, so I did not care. I looked at the small paper ticket in my hand. The town name was printed clearly. I had everything I needed, or so I thought. About 30 minutes later, the train stopped. It was not a station. It simply stopped in the middle of the dark countryside. The lights inside the train stayed on. Nobody said anything. I looked around. The man with the book was still reading. The family was sleeping. The woman on the phone had put her phone away. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. The train was still not moving. I started to feel nervous. I looked outside. There were no buildings, no road, no street lights, just trees and darkness. Then the lights went off, just for a few seconds. The carriage became completely dark. Someone laughed quietly. Then the lights came back. I told myself everything is fine. A few minutes later, the train began to move again. I relaxed. Soon after that, a gentle sound came from the speaker above the door. I could not understand the announcement clearly. It was too quiet and there was too much noise from the train. I looked at the other passengers. Nobody seemed worried. So I opened my sandwich. This is where my story becomes a little strange. I was eating when I noticed a small piece of paper on the seat in front of me. It was not there before. It was folded in half. I looked around. Nobody was looking at me. I picked it up. On the paper, someone had written 3 words. Do not miss it.
What?
Yes.
Did it have a name?
No, just those 3 words. Emma, you are smiling.
I am listening.
I thought maybe someone had left a message for a friend, so I put the paper on the little table and ignored it. 10 minutes later, I heard a very soft tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. I looked at the window. Nothing. Tap, tap, tap. I looked again. It was a branch moving outside. The train was passing through a forest. The branch touched the window every few seconds. I laughed at myself. Great, I thought. I am getting scared by a tree. The train kept moving. Eventually, I fell asleep. I do not know how long I slept. Maybe 20 minutes. Maybe 40. When I woke up, the carriage was very quiet. I looked at the window, and I saw something unexpected. A small house. It was standing alone in the forest. There was one yellow light in one window. The train passed it very slowly. For 1 second, I saw a person standing outside. Then the house disappeared behind the trees. I sat very still. I told myself it was probably a normal house, a worker's house, a small cabin, anything. But then I looked at the paper. Do not miss it. Suddenly, I thought about the words in a different way. Maybe the message was not meant for the person who had left it. Maybe it was meant for me. I almost laughed because the idea sounded ridiculous. Still, I could not stop looking outside. A few minutes later, the train slowed down. There was a small platform ahead. I checked my ticket. My destination was not on the list of stops, so I knew this was not my station. The train slowed almost to a stop. Then it moved forward again. And as it passed the platform, I saw the same yellow light. There was a little building beside the platform, 1 lamp, 1 wooden bench, and a sign. I could not read it clearly. Then the train moved away. I forgot about it after that. The next morning, I arrived at my town. I spent 3 wonderful days there. I walked in the mountains. I drank coffee in a little cafe. I met some friendly people. I forgot all about the train. On the way home, I took the same route. And just before sunset, I looked through the window. I saw the small platform again. This time, I could read the sign. It said, Old Forest Stop. I checked the train map. The stop was not marked. When I got home, I searched online for it. I found almost nothing, just one old photo of the railway line. And in the corner of the photo, there was the same tiny building. Maybe it was not strange at all. Maybe the stop was simply no longer used. Maybe the train still passed it because the old track was still there. But there was one thing I never understood. Who wrote the message? Do not miss it. I kept the paper for years. It became soft and old from being in my wallet. One day, I lost it, but I still remember the feeling I had on that train. Not fear exactly, something between curiosity and wonder. And that is why I still love traveling alone. Because sometimes the best memories are the things you cannot explain completely.
Did you ever go back?
No,
Why not?
because some places are more beautiful when they stay a little mysterious.
That sounds like something from a movie.
Maybe, but it happened to me.
I like that.
Lily looks across the fire at the dark surface of the lake. For a few seconds, no one jokes. The story was not truly frightening, but it leaves a small question in the air. The kind of question that makes you look at a dark window for 1 second longer than usual. The fire cracks. Mike reaches for another piece of wood.
Okay, my story needs to be less mysterious.
Please.
Mine is about a hotel, one suitcase, and a very stupid mistake. This happened when I was traveling with my brother. We were going to another city for a weekend. We packed quickly because we had both been working all week. I packed clothes, my toothbrush, my charger, and one pair of shoes. My brother packed almost nothing. He said, "We have everything we need." I believed him. That was mistake number one. We arrived at the hotel in the afternoon. It was an old but nice hotel near the city center. There were plants near the entrance, a little wooden desk, and a very old elevator. We checked in. The room was on the 4th floor. We opened the door. The room looked great. 2 beds, a small table, a television, a bathroom, a big window. My brother put his bag on the bed. Then he looked at me. "Mike," he said. "Yes? Where is my suitcase?" I laughed. He did not. I said, "The bag is right there." He said, "That is your bag." I looked at the bag. It was my bag. I looked at him. He had a small backpack. His suitcase was still at home.
No.
Yes.
How?
He thought I had packed his clothes.
Did you?
No.
So what did he have?
A toothbrush, a phone charger, 2 shirts, and a book.
That is enough for a very simple trip.
It was not enough for the dinner we had planned that night. We looked at each other. Then we both started laughing. The problem was that the hotel was fully booked. There was no extra luggage to borrow, no shop inside, and the nearest clothing store was a 30-minute walk away. So we went shopping. My brother bought a shirt, then another shirt, then socks, then underwear, then a pair of shoes because his shoes were old and uncomfortable. He looked at the prices. "This weekend is becoming expensive," he said. I said, "At least you are learning a lesson." He said, "You are the one who forgot to check the suitcase." I said, "Yes, that is the lesson for me too." We walked back to the hotel. When we entered the room, my brother put his new clothes on the chair. Then he opened the hotel closet. There was a small safe inside. He looked at me. "We should put our important things there." I agreed. We put our passports, some cash, and our train tickets inside. Then I closed the safe. We both looked at the safe. I turned the key. Nothing happened. I turned it again. Still nothing. Then my brother said something that I still remember. "What if we just close it?" We closed it. The door locked. We looked at each other. Neither of us knew the code.
How did that happen?
Very easily. There was a little instruction card hidden behind the safe door. We had not read it. We called the front desk from the room. A few minutes later, the safe was open. The hotel worker explained the system. We laughed. At dinner, everything was normal again. We found a small restaurant near the hotel. We ordered soup, bread, and pasta. My brother looked happy. "This trip is going well," he said. I said, "Please do not say that." He laughed. We went back to the hotel around 11. The hallway was very quiet. We entered the room. And this is where the story becomes a little funny again. The television was on. Neither of us had turned it on. My brother stopped. I stopped. The screen showed a nature documentary. A man was talking about bears. We looked at each other. "Did you leave it on?" He asked. "No." We walked closer. Then the television suddenly changed to another channel. My brother jumped. I started laughing. He said, "Do not laugh." I said, "It is a television." Then we discovered the problem. The remote control had a broken button. The television kept changing channels by itself. That was the scary mystery. A broken remote.
Very frightening.
Terrifying, but the real adventure happened later. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up because I heard water. Drip, drip, drip. I opened my eyes. I listened. Drip, drip, drip. I looked toward the bathroom. My brother was sleeping. I got out of bed. The bathroom floor was wet. The sink was dripping. I tried to turn the tap off. It was already off. I checked the shower. Nothing. I looked under the sink. Nothing. Then I saw water coming from a tiny pipe. I put a towel under it. The dripping stopped. I went back to bed. 10 minutes later, drip, drip, drip. I looked at the floor. The water had returned. I woke my brother. "We have a problem." He opened one eye. "What time is it?" 2:20. He closed his eye again. "Then we do not have a problem until morning." I laughed, but we called the front desk anyway. A worker came up, checked the pipe, and fixed it. Then we went back to sleep. The next morning, we were both tired. My brother looked at me and said, "Next time we pack together." I said, "Next time we make a list." He said, "Next time we stay home." We both laughed. And that trip taught me something simple. A good trip is not a perfect trip. Sometimes the best memories come from small mistakes. The wrong suitcase, the broken remote, the dripping sink, the late night walk for a shirt. Years later, I do not remember the restaurant very well. I do not remember what movie was playing in the city. I do not remember the name of the street, but I remember my brother standing in the hotel room, looking at the bed and asking, "Where is my suitcase?" And every time we travel together, he checks twice.
At least he learned.
We both did.
Mike smiles as he finishes. The tension left by Lily's quiet story is gone. The group laughs again, but softly. The night is getting colder. The fire has become lower and brighter. Daniel adds another piece of wood. For a moment, the flames rise high enough to light all 5 faces. Daniel looks at them and says something that makes everyone laugh.
Okay, my story is about cooking. That sounds dangerous. It was. I was 23 when I decided I could cook a perfect dinner. Not a simple dinner, a perfect dinner. I invited 2 friends to my apartment. I wanted to make pasta, salad, and a small dessert. I had watched several cooking videos online. I had a recipe. I had good ingredients. I had a clean kitchen. I thought I was ready. The first problem was the pasta. The recipe said, cook for 10 minutes. I thought that meant exactly 10 minutes after the water started boiling. So I put the pasta into cold water and started the timer. 10 minutes later, I looked at the pot. The pasta was hard. I added more time. Then I forgot about it. I started making the sauce. The sauce was going well. Tomatoes, garlic, olive oil, a little salt. It smelled good. Then I heard a strange sound. The pot was boiling over. I ran to the stove. Water was everywhere. I turned the heat down. I cleaned the stove. I cleaned the floor. I looked at the pasta. It was now very soft. Too soft. Very soft.
Pasta soup.
Exactly. I decided to start again. This time I watched the pot carefully. The second problem was the salad. The recipe said I needed a little salt. I opened the salt container. The lid fell off. A lot of salt went onto the salad. I stared at it. I thought, maybe it is fine. It was not fine. I tried to remove the salt with a spoon. It did not work. So I made another salad. The third problem was the dessert. I wanted to make chocolate cake. The recipe looked easy. Butter, flour, sugar, eggs, chocolate. I mixed everything together. Then I put the cake in the oven. I felt proud. I walked around my kitchen like a professional chef. I even tasted the sauce again. The sauce was good. The salad was good. The pasta was acceptable. Things were getting better. Then I smelled something strange. Smoke. I opened the oven. The cake was very dark. Not brown. Dark. Almost black. I turned off the oven. I took the cake out. I put it on the table. I looked at it for a long time. Then my friends arrived. At the perfect moment. Exactly. They walked into the kitchen. One friend looked at the cake. The other looked at the pasta. Then they looked at me. Nobody said anything. Finally, one of them asked, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yes. Dinner is almost ready." We sat down. We ate the pasta. It was too soft. We ate the salad. It was a little salty. Then we looked at the cake. Nobody wanted to touch it. Finally, I cut a small piece. I took a bite. Everyone watched me. I said, "It tastes like chocolate." A miracle. A small miracle. We ate the cake. It was not good, but we laughed a lot. After dinner, we washed the dishes together. My friends did not make fun of me for long. Actually, they helped me. One of them showed me how to cook pasta correctly. The other showed me how to make a simple salad dressing. And then we ate ice cream. That was the best part of the dinner. A week later, I tried again. This time I made only pasta. No dessert. No complicated sauce. No big plan. Just pasta. It was good. Then I tried again. I added vegetables. Then I tried something else. Slowly, I learned. A year later, I could cook a pretty good dinner, but I still remembered the black cake. I kept a photo of it on my phone. Whenever I feel too confident, I look at that photo.
That is good self-control.
Yes, the cake keeps me humble.
Do you still cook for your friends?
All the time.
Do you still burn things?
Sometimes. So nothing changed. Some things changed. The cake did not.
The laughter fades into the quiet sounds of the forest. Daniel's story is simple, but there is something comforting in it. We often imagine that being good at something means doing it perfectly, but most skills grow differently. You try, you make a mistake, you try again, you learn one small thing, and then you try again. The fire moves slowly now. Some of the wood has become red and soft. Emma watches the flames for a moment. She has been quiet for most of the evening. Bob looks at her.
Emma, you have been suspiciously quiet.
I have been listening.
That is not an answer.
Fine. I have a story.
Is it scary?
Not really.
That means it is probably scary.
It happened when I was younger, and I still remember one night very clearly.
Emma moves a little closer to the fire. Her voice becomes quieter. The forest is darker now, and the lake reflects almost nothing but the firelight. Emma begins.
I was 17. My family had a small house near a lake. It was not this lake, but it looked similar. Trees all around, a narrow road, no large buildings nearby. One summer, I stayed there alone for a few days. My parents had to leave early because of work. I was supposed to stay inside, read, watch movies, and enjoy the quiet. I liked it. During the day, everything felt peaceful. I walked outside. I sat near the water. I took pictures. At night, the forest became completely different. Every sound became louder. A bird sounded like a person. A branch sounded like a door. The wind sounded like someone walking. On my second night, a storm came. It was not a huge storm, but the rain was strong. The power went off around 10. I lit a candle, then another. The house was warm, but outside it was very dark. I sat on the sofa with a blanket. I could hear the rain against the windows. Then I heard something else. 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. The sound came from the front door. I waited. Nothing. Then I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. I stood up. My first thought was that it might be my neighbor. But my neighbor lived almost a kilometer away, and nobody should have been walking outside in the storm. I walked slowly toward the door. I did not open it. I looked to the window beside the door. Nobody. I waited. Nothing. I stepped back. Then I heard a sound from the kitchen. A small crash. I turned around. My heart started beating very fast. I walked into the kitchen. One of the windows was open. The wind had knocked a cup off the table. I laughed. Okay, I said, that is all. I closed the window. Then I heard the 3 knocks again. This time, I was sure. They were real. I went back to the front door. I looked outside. The porch was empty. But on the wet wooden floor, I saw something. A small line of water. It came from the edge of the porch and continued toward the door. I looked down. There were footprints. Not many, just 2 or 3 wet marks. I did not open the door. I stepped back. Then I remembered something. The back door? It was often difficult to close. I ran to the kitchen. The back door was open. The wind was pushing it. Rain was coming inside. And there, on the floor, was a small, wet footprint. I realized what had happened. The front door had been making a sound because a tree branch was touching it in the wind. The kitchen window had been open. The back door had opened. The footprints were probably from me earlier that day. I had walked outside in the rain and then forgotten about the marks. But there was still one problem. The footprints were going toward the living room. I had not made them. I stood in the kitchen for a long time. The house was silent. Then I heard a soft sound from the hallway. Tap. I looked up. Tap. I walked slowly toward the hallway. It was a loose branch outside the window. It moved against the glass. I started laughing again. I was scared of branches, wind, and my own imagination. I closed the windows. I locked the doors. I turned on every battery-powered light I had. Then I went back to the sofa. The storm continued for another hour. Finally, I fell asleep. In the morning, everything looked normal. The sun was bright. The lake was calm. The birds were loud. I made breakfast. Then I walked around the house. Near the living room, I found something on the floor. A small wet leaf. It was shaped like a hand. For 1 second, I felt nervous again. Then I opened the door and looked outside. The ground was covered with leaves. The wind had moved them everywhere. I smiled. There was probably no mystery at all. But I still wanted an explanation for one thing. The 3 knocks. That afternoon, I walked around the house and found a thin branch near the front door. When the wind pushed it, it hit the wood 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. Exactly the same sound. I laughed. The scary night suddenly became a simple lesson. Darkness changes the way we listen. When we are calm, a branch is a branch. When we are afraid, a branch becomes a person. Still, there was one final detail. The next morning, I found a small line of muddy footprints near the lake. They came from the water to the path and then disappeared. I followed them for a short distance. There were only a few. Maybe an animal had walked there. Maybe someone had visited the lake. Maybe they were from my father from the day before. I never found out. And honestly, I am glad. Not every little mystery needs an answer. Some memories are better when they keep one small question.
So you think it was a person?
No idea.
That is not comforting.
I am not trying to be comforting.
Did you stay in the house the next night?
Yes.
Alone?
Yes.
You are braver than me.
Maybe, or maybe I was 17 and did not think enough.
That is also possible.
Probably more possible.
Nobody speaks for a few seconds. A small breeze moves through the trees. The lake makes a quiet sound against the shore. Then Mike points at the forest.
Was that a branch?
Do not start. They all laugh. The little moment of tension disappears. The night feels peaceful again. Only one story remains. And this time, it is Daniel who looks at Bob. All right, Bob. You started the night. Lily had the strange train. Mike had the terrible suitcase. I had the black cake. Emma had the mysterious footsteps. What is your last question? You told us years ago that something very strange happened to you near a lake. I did.
Wait, what?
You never told me that.
I did not.
Then I think it is time.
Bob does not answer immediately. He looks at the fire. Then he looks at the lake. His smile is gone, but there is no fear in his face, only a little hesitation.
Okay, but this is the last story.
The friends become quiet. The fire burns low, and Bob begins to tell the one story he has never told in full.
It happened when I was 24. I was hiking alone for one day. I was not looking for adventure. I just wanted a quiet walk. I had a backpack, some water, a sandwich, and an old camera. The weather was good. The forest was dry. The sky was clear. I followed a trail toward a small lake. According to the map, the lake was about 2 hours away. I walked for a long time. The forest became thicker. The path became smaller. But I was not worried. Then I saw something strange. A wooden sign beside the path. It had no words, only an arrow. The arrow pointed to a narrow trail going left. The official trail continued straight. I looked at the map. The map showed only one road. The road went straight. So I continued straight. A few minutes later, I heard water. I thought I was near the lake. Then I heard something else. Music. Very quiet music. It sounded like someone playing a simple piano melody. I stopped. I listened. There was the wind. There were birds. There were leaves. And then, very softly, the music came again. I could not tell where it was coming from. I walked toward the sound. After about 10 minutes, I found a small clearing. There was an old picnic table. Nothing else. No house, no car, no people. The music stopped. I stood there for a minute. Then I noticed something on the table. A small metal box. I opened it. Inside was a photograph. It showed the same lake I was trying to reach. On the back of the photograph were 2 words. Come closer.
Okay.
Yes, I know how it sounds. I should have left. Instead, I put the photo in my bag. I walked toward the lake. 10 minutes later, I saw the water through the trees. The lake was beautiful. Perfectly still. There was a small wooden dock. It looked old, but it was in good condition. I walked onto the dock. The water was very clear. I could see rocks under the surface. Then I heard the piano music again. This time it was closer. I looked around. Nothing. The music continued for a few seconds, then stopped. I took out my camera. I wanted to take a picture of the lake. I raised the camera, and I saw something in the screen. A small light across the lake. Not a reflection, a real light. I lowered the camera. The light disappeared. I raised it again. The light came back. Now I was curious. There was a narrow path around the lake. I decided to walk toward the light. It took about 20 minutes. The path was quiet. Then I saw an old cabin. It was very small. One window, one door, a short chimney. There was no smoke, but there was a warm light inside. I stood outside. I did not knock. I thought about going back. Then the door opened, very slowly. I stepped back. Nobody came outside. The room inside was dark, except for a small lamp. I said, "Hello." No answer. I said it again. Nothing. I did not enter. After a few seconds, the door closed by itself. I walked backward. Then I turned around and walked quickly away. When I reached the lake again, it was getting dark. I checked my phone. No signal. My battery was at 12%. I knew I had to leave. The problem was that the forest looked different in the evening. Every path looked similar. I took out the map. The trail back was clear. I started walking. For about 30 minutes, everything was fine. Then I heard footsteps. Behind me. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I walked. They walked. I stopped. They stopped. I turned around. Nothing. I felt nervous. Then I remembered something important. I was walking on dry leaves. Every step I made sounded like footsteps. When I stopped, the sound stopped. I laughed quietly. I was doing exactly what Emma had described. I was turning normal sounds into scary things. I kept walking. Then I saw a small light ahead. I thought it was the road. I walked toward it. It was not the road. It was the same cabin. I had somehow returned to it. I checked the map. The cabin was not marked. I looked around. For the first time that day, I felt truly lost. The sun was almost gone. I decided to stay calm. I found a dry place under a group of trees. I drank some water. I ate half of my sandwich. I planned to wait until morning. Then I heard the piano. Again, very soft. This time I did not follow it. I stayed where I was. The music continued for maybe 1 minute. Then it stopped. The forest became completely silent. I looked at the sky. Stars were appearing between the branches. And then I saw a real light in the distance, a flashlight. It moved slowly between the trees. I stood up. For a moment, I was afraid. Then I heard a human voice. It was not close, but it was clear enough. "Hello?" I answered. "Hello." The light moved toward me. I heard a person calling again. "Are you lost?" I said, "Yes." The light came closer. But before I saw anyone, I noticed something strange. The voice sounded familiar. Not because I knew the person, because it sounded exactly like a voice I had heard earlier that day. The voice from the cabin area. I stepped back. Then I heard another sound behind me, a branch breaking. I turned around, and suddenly a flashlight came from another direction. There were 2 lights, 2 people. They were searchers from a hiking group. They had seen my car at the trail entrance and realized that I had not returned. They were looking for me. The familiar voice was not mysterious at all. It was simply the voice of one of the hikers calling into the forest. They found me. They gave me water. They showed me the way back. We walked together for almost an hour. When we reached the main trail, I looked back toward the lake. I could not see the cabin. I could not hear the piano. Nothing. The next morning, I went back with 2 friends. We found the lake. We found the dock. But we did not find the cabin. We searched for almost 2 hours. Nothing. One friend told me that maybe the cabin had been farther around the lake. Another said I was probably remembering the location incorrectly. Maybe they were right. But I still had the photograph. I took it out. The lake in the photograph looked exactly like the lake in front of us. On the back were the words, "Come closer." I showed it to my friends. They looked at it. Neither of them knew what to say. Years later, I still have that photo. And I still have one question. Who put it in the box? Maybe someone visited the area before me. Maybe the cabin was real. Maybe it was an old building that had been removed years earlier. Maybe the photo was part of some old game or a private joke. There are many possible answers. But I remember one thing very clearly. That night, while I was sitting under the trees, I was not afraid of ghosts. I was afraid of being alone. And when I finally saw the flashlight, I understood something. Sometimes what scares us most is not the dark. It is the feeling that nobody knows where we are. Once I heard a human voice, everything changed. The forest was still dark. The lake was still there. The trees were still moving. But I was no longer alone. And that made the whole place feel different.
That is actually a beautiful story.
Even with the cabin.
Especially with the cabin.
Do you still have the photograph? Yes.
Did you bring it tonight?
No.
Good.
Why?
Because I do not want to know what is in your backpack. Everyone laughs.
The laughter is quieter this time. but it stays around the fire for a few moments. The 5 friends look out at the lake. The night has become very still. The mysterious stories are finished. The funny stories are finished. There is nothing left to prove. Only the fire, only the trees, only the lake, and 5 friends sitting together in the dark. No one speaks for a while. Then Emma says something very softly.
I think my favorite part of these stories is that none of them are really about the strange things.
What are they about?
People.
I like that.
And terrible cooking.
And bad packing.
And bad running. They laugh again.
The fire is slowly becoming smaller. The last strong pieces of wood glow red. A few tiny sparks rise and disappear above the trees. The lake is almost black now, but the surface still carries a thin line of light from the fire. The friends are tired. Their voices are slower. Their sentences become shorter. They are no longer trying to entertain one another. They are simply enjoying being together. And maybe that is the nicest part of an evening like this. You do not always need a big event. You do not need a perfect plan. You do not need to be somewhere exciting. Sometimes you only need a warm fire, a quiet place, and people you feel comfortable with. So, before this night ends, listen to the sounds around them one more time. The fire, the wind, the water, the trees, and 5 friends breathing slowly in the cool night air.
Are we going to sleep soon?
I hope so.
You said that an hour ago.
I was practicing.
I think we should clean up first.
Yes.
Quietly.
Very quietly.
They begin to move slowly around the camp. No one rushes. They collect the cups. They put the food away. They make sure the fire is safe. The lake remains calm. The forest remains dark, but the darkness no longer feels mysterious. It feels peaceful. And as the night becomes deeper, the sound of the friends slowly disappears into the distance. The night could have ended there, but nobody gets up. The fire is still warm and the conversation has found a slower rhythm. The 5 friends begin remembering smaller moments from their lives. Not big adventures this time, just the kind of little stories that stay in your mind for years.
Actually, I have one more.
Of course you do.
It is short.
That is what you said before.
Fine. Maybe it is not short.
Bob's second story begins on a Monday morning when he was late for work, forgot his wallet, and somehow ended up helping a stranger.
One Monday morning, I woke up 10 minutes before I needed to leave. I opened my eyes, looked at the clock, and said one word. No, I got dressed very quickly. I skipped breakfast. I grabbed my bag and ran outside. Halfway to the bus stop, I realized I had forgotten my wallet. I ran back. I found the wallet on the kitchen table. Then I ran outside again. The bus was already waiting. I ran faster. The driver closed the door. I knocked on the bus window. The bus started moving.
Perfect morning.
Exactly. I stood there and watched the bus disappear. I looked at my phone. I had 20 minutes before work. I started walking quickly. Then I heard someone say, "Excuse me." I turned around. There was a woman standing near a bench. She was looking under the bench. She asked if I had seen a small blue wallet. I had not, so I helped her look. We checked the grass. We checked the bench. We checked the path. After a few minutes, I found it behind the bench. She was very relieved. She thanked me again and again. I checked my phone. I was already late. I told her, "I am happy you found it, but I really have to go." She smiled and said, "Then today is probably not going exactly as you planned." I laughed. Not at all. I arrived at work 15 minutes late. My boss looked at me. I expected a difficult conversation. Instead, he asked, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yes, I just had a strange morning." I told him the story. He smiled. "Maybe it was not such a bad morning," he said, and I think he was right. Sometimes being late makes you angry. Sometimes it makes you notice something you would have missed. If I had caught the bus, I would never have met that woman. I would never have found her wallet. And I would never have heard that simple sentence. Today is probably not going exactly as you planned. I still think about it when my plans change.
Bob pauses and looks into the fire. The lesson is small but useful. A day does not have to go perfectly to be a good day. Sometimes the unexpected part becomes the part you remember.
That is a nice one.
And you still hate being late? Yes.
So nothing was learned.
Something was learned. I still hate being late, but now I hate it with more wisdom. They laugh softly.
Okay, my turn.
Lily's second story is much quieter. It is about a small coastal town and one important decision.
A few years ago, I had to decide whether to leave a job I did not like. It was not a terrible job. Nobody was mean. The office was comfortable. The pay was okay. But every Sunday evening, I felt tired before the week even started. I kept telling myself to stay. Maybe next month will be better. Then one weekend, I took a train to a small coastal town. I went alone. I walked along the water for almost 3 hours. There were no plans. No meetings. No emails. Just wind and waves. I found a bench near the harbor and sat down. A fisherman was repairing a net nearby. A child was riding a bicycle. A dog was sleeping under a table outside a cafe. Everything looked ordinary. But because I was quiet, I started thinking clearly. I asked myself a simple question. If nothing changes, do I want to live the same week again and again? The answer came very quickly. No. That evening, I went back to the hotel and wrote a short list. What I liked, what I did not like, what I was afraid of, what I wanted to try. The list was not a magical answer, but it helped. A few weeks later, I left the job. It was scary. For a while, I wondered if I had made a mistake. Then I found another job. It was not perfect either, but I liked the people more. I had more energy. Slowly, I started feeling like myself again. The strange thing is that I do not remember the exact moment when I made the decision. I remember the bench. I remember the wind. I remember the dog sleeping under the cafe table. And I remember how quiet my mind felt. That taught me something. Sometimes you do not need more advice. You just need enough silence to hear your own thoughts.
Lily looks toward the lake. Her story has no dramatic ending, and perhaps that is why it feels real. Some of the biggest decisions in life are made quietly.
I think I like that one the most.
Why?
Because sometimes the quiet stories are the important ones.
Daniel's words make everyone quiet for a moment. Then Mike smiles.
Okay, now I feel like I need to say something meaningful.
You can try.
I have a story about a bicycle.
That is not meaningful.
It becomes meaningful.
Mike begins another story.
When I was a teenager, my father taught me how to ride a bicycle without looking back. I already knew how to ride, but he told me there was another skill. He said, "You need to know where you are going without being afraid of what is behind you." I did not understand him. He put one hand on the back of my seat. I started riding. After a few seconds, he said, "Do not turn around." Of course I turned around, and I crashed into a bush.
Good lesson.
Very good. I got up. I was angry. I told him his advice was terrible. He laughed. Then he said, "Try again." So I tried again. This time I looked forward. I heard him behind me. Then I heard nothing. For a second, I thought he had let go. I almost turned around. But I remembered his words, so I kept going. I rode down the street. I reached the corner. Then I stopped. I looked back. He was far away. He had let go several meters earlier. He was smiling. He said, "See, you were ready before you knew it." I remember that sentence even now. Years later, when I started something new, I often thought about that bicycle. Sometimes we keep looking back because the past feels safer. We know what happened there. But the road in front of us is the road we can actually move on. That does not mean we forget the past. It means we do not let it decide every step.
Mike looks into the fire. This time, nobody makes a joke. The night has become softer.
That was meaningful.
Thank you.
I am surprised.
I contain multitudes.
Please never say that again. They laugh quietly.
Daniel is next. His second story is about a small act of kindness on a rainy day.
There was a day when I had almost no money in my bank account. It was near the end of the month. I had enough for food, but not much more. That afternoon, it started raining hard. I was walking home with a bag of groceries. At a bus stop, I saw a young man standing in the rain. He was looking at the road and checking his phone. The buses were delayed. He looked worried. I asked if everything was okay. He said he was trying to get to the hospital because his mother was there. His phone battery was almost dead, and he did not know which bus to take. I checked the route on my phone. I knew the area. I showed him where to go. Then I noticed he did not have an umbrella. I gave him mine. He said, "No, you need it." I said, "It is okay. I am almost home." That was true. My apartment was only 10 minutes away. He took the umbrella and ran toward the next street. I walked home in the rain. I was wet. My groceries were a little wet. For a moment I thought, that was not a very smart decision. Then I opened my door and felt strangely happy. A few weeks later, I was waiting for a bus on another rainy day. A car stopped near the road. A man got out. He was holding an umbrella. He walked toward me and said, "Are you Daniel?" I was surprised. It was the same man from the bus stop. He remembered me. He gave me a small paper bag. Inside was a warm pastry and a note. The note said, "Thank you for the umbrella. My mother is okay." I stood there smiling in the rain. I did not expect anything in return. That is why the moment meant so much. Kindness is strange like that. Sometimes you give something small and forget it. Then much later you discover that the other person did not forget.
Daniel finishes. The story is warm, almost as warm as the fire. Emma smiles.
I like that.
Me too.
Emma is last again. She thinks for a moment before speaking.
My second story is very small. It happened when I was a child. I lost a blue notebook. It was not expensive. It had nothing important inside, but I wrote everything in it. Ideas, little drawings, questions, names of places I wanted to visit. One afternoon, I could not find it. I looked everywhere. Under the bed, in the kitchen, in my school bag, on the sofa, nothing. A week later, I stopped looking. Years passed. I forgot about the notebook. Then one winter, I visited my parents. My mother was cleaning an old closet. She found a box. Inside the box was my blue notebook. I opened it. The pages were full of small drawings and simple sentences. I read one page. It said, "When I am older, I want to travel and sit near a lake." I started laughing. I was sitting in a room hundreds of miles from that childhood house, but I remembered writing those words. I have forgotten them. And somehow the child who wrote them had known something about the person I would become. Not everything, not the details, but the feeling. Travel, water, quiet places, curiosity. It made me realize how much of our future begins as a very small idea, a sentence in a notebook, a thought during a walk, a dream we are not ready to explain. We do not always notice those little beginnings, but sometimes years later we look back and realize they were there all along.
Emma closes her eyes for a moment. The five friends have now shared many stories. Some were funny, some were strange, some were quiet, some were difficult. But all of them were small pieces of ordinary life, and that is what makes them worth listening to. The fire has become very low now.
I think that is enough stories for one night.
I agree.
One more?
No,
For once, I agree with Emma.
The friends laugh softly. They sit together for another minute without talking. The night is calm. The lake reflects a few stars. The trees move gently. The fire gives one final warm glow. The friends are still not ready to leave. The fire is smaller now, but it is still warm enough to keep the night comfortable. There is a different feeling around the group. The stories have become less like entertainment and more like memories being passed from one person to another.
I just remembered one more thing.
Naturally.
This one really is short.
Bob tells him about the smallest gift he ever received.
When I was a student, I had a very difficult week. I was tired, I had too much work, and I had almost no time for myself. One morning, I was sitting in a library, trying to finish an assignment. I looked at the clock and realized I had been sitting there for 3 hours without taking a break. I went outside. It was cold. I bought a cheap coffee and sat on a bench. A few minutes later, an older man sat beside me. He had a small paper bag. He opened it and took out a cookie. He looked at me and asked if I wanted one. I said yes. He gave me the cookie. We did not talk much. After a few minutes, he stood up and left. That was it. It was just a cookie, but I remember it because I needed a small kindness that morning. Years later, I still think about that moment. Sometimes people help us without knowing exactly what we need. Maybe kindness does not have to be big. Maybe it only needs to arrive at the right moment.
I like that.
Me too.
Lily is next.
Mine is about a rainy window.
She remembers a night when she could not sleep during an important trip.
I was staying in a very small hotel room. It was raining heavily outside. I had an important meeting the next morning and I was nervous. I tried to sleep. I turned the light off. 5 minutes later, I turned it on again. I checked my phone. I checked the time. I drank some water. Then I looked at the window. Rain was running down the glass in long lines. I watched it for a few minutes. The cars outside moved slowly. The street lights reflected in the wet road. I stopped checking the time. I stopped thinking about the meeting. I simply watched the rain. After a while, I fell asleep. The next morning, I felt calm. The meeting went well. Since then, when I cannot sleep, I remember that window. Sometimes the mind becomes tired because we keep asking it to solve tomorrow before tomorrow has arrived.
That is very true.
Mike gives Lily a quiet nod. Then he tells one of his favorite small memories.
When I was a child, I believed the moon followed our car. Every time my parents drove at night, I watched the moon through the window. I thought it moved because we moved. One night, I asked my father why the moon was following us. He said, "Maybe it likes our car." I believed him. Years later, I understood how distance works, but I still sometimes look at the moon when I am driving. And for 1 second, I remember being a child and thinking the moon had chosen our family. Maybe growing up does not mean losing every old idea. Maybe we can keep a few of them because they make the world feel softer.
That is a good thought.
Daniel smiles. His story is about a forgotten birthday.
A few years ago, I forgot my own birthday. Not completely. I knew the month. I knew the date was somewhere in the week, but I was so busy that I did not think about it. That evening, I came home from work. I opened the door. The apartment was dark. Then the lights came on. My friends were there. They had made a small dinner. There was a cake on the table. I stood there and laughed. I said, "How did you remember?" One friend said, "Because you are important to us." That sentence stayed with me. Not because of the cake, not because of the dinner, because sometimes we are so busy thinking about what we need to do that we forget to notice how important we are to other people. The next day, I wrote down one thing in my notebook. Remember your people. It sounds simple, but I still need the reminder sometimes.
Emma listens quietly. When it is her turn, she speaks even more softly.
My story is about a small blue light. When I was younger, I moved into my first apartment. The apartment was tiny. The walls were almost empty. The kitchen was small. At night, the place felt strange because everything was new. One evening, I could not sleep. I turned off all the lights. The room became completely dark. Then I noticed a tiny blue light from a device near the wall. It was very small, almost nothing, but in the darkness, it was easy to see. I watched it for a long time. I thought about how the apartment had been empty before me. Now there was a little light, a cup on the table, a book on the floor, a jacket on a chair. It was slowly becoming home. I realized that home is not a perfect place. It is a place that slowly collects your small things, your habits, your memories, and your quiet nights. I think that was the first night my new apartment truly felt like mine.
Emma finishes. The friends remain quiet. There is no joke this time. Outside, the wind moves gently through the trees. The fire is almost gone. The lake looks like a dark piece of glass. 5 friends are together, listening to the last small sounds of the night.
I think we really should sleep now.
I agree.
That took you long enough.
Very long enough.
We can stop here.
They slowly begin to prepare the camp for the night. There is no rush. The cups are put away. The food is packed. The blankets are folded. The fire is carefully reduced until only a few red pieces of wood remain. The forest does not feel frightening now. It feels like a place that is sleeping with them. The lake moves gently against the shore. The trees whisper in the wind, and the last light from the fire fades. Maybe this is a good moment to stop thinking about the day. There will always be another message, another task, another plan, another thing to remember. But not right now. Right now, there is only this quiet moment. The forest, the lake, the night, and the sound of a gentle conversation becoming silence. If you are listening while you are getting ready to sleep, you can let your attention become softer. You do not need to translate every word. You do not need to repeat every sentence. Just listen. English can become familiar in quiet moments too. Listen to the rhythm. Listen to the pauses. Listen to the way simple words become a story. And now, slowly, let the story fade. The lake is still. The trees are still. The fire is almost dark. The 5 friends are resting. The night is peaceful. There is nothing else you need to do. Take one slow breath and another. Let your shoulders relax. Let your thoughts become quieter. Tomorrow can wait. Tonight is for rest. One last breath. One last quiet moment. Nothing needs to be solved tonight. The story can stay unfinished, and tomorrow can begin when you wake. For now, rest. The water is quiet. The trees are still. The night is gentle. Good night. Good night. Sleep well, EOF. Before the night is completely over, the friends remember a few final moments. They are smaller than the main stories, but sometimes small memories are the ones that feel closest to us.
I have another one about a grocery store.
You really collect stories everywhere.
Apparently, one evening, I went to buy milk. That was all I needed. I walked into the store and saw a woman standing in front of a shelf. She looked confused. She had a list in her hand, but she could not find one item. I knew the store well, so I helped her. We found it together. She thanked me and laughed. She said she had just moved to the city and still did not know where anything was. I told her I had felt the same way when I first moved there. We talked for only a few minutes. Then we went in different directions. A week later, I saw her again in the same store. She remembered me. She said, "You are the first person here who made the city feel a little smaller." I never forgot that. A new place can feel huge when everything is unfamiliar. A small conversation can make it feel less lonely.
Lily nods.
I know that feeling.
Lily's last memory is about a letter she almost threw away.
When I was 19, I received a letter from a friend who lived far away. It was not a long letter. There were only 2 pages. I was busy at the time, so I put it in a drawer. Months passed. I moved to another apartment. I packed my things. I almost threw the letter away because I thought I did not need it anymore. But before I threw it away, I read it again. The letter talked about ordinary things. A bad day at work, a funny meal, a rainy afternoon, a book, a song, nothing important. And yet, reading it years later made me smile. It reminded me that life is mostly made of ordinary days. We often think memories must be big, a wedding, a trip, a celebration. But sometimes a simple letter about a rainy afternoon becomes a memory because it comes from someone we love. I kept the letter. I still have it.
Mike looks across the fire.
Mine is about a pair of old shoes. I had a pair that I loved. They were cheap and uncomfortable, but I had worn them for years. One day, the sole finally broke. I wanted to throw them away. Instead, I took them to a small repair shop. The man there fixed them in 20 minutes. When I asked how much I owed him, he named a very small price. I said, "That is all." He smiled and said, "They still have some life in them." That sentence stayed with me. People can say the same thing about many things. A tired person may still have energy left. A difficult day may still have one good hour. A failed plan may still contain one useful lesson. Not everything needs to be replaced just because it is old. Sometimes, it only needs a little care.
Daniel smiles.
That is a good one.
Daniel's final memory is about breakfast.
When I was younger, I often skipped breakfast. I always thought mornings were too busy. One summer, I stayed with my grandmother for a few weeks. Every morning, she woke up early and made breakfast. She never asked whether I was hungry. She simply put food on the table. One morning, I told her I did not have time. She looked at me and said, "You have time to eat one piece of toast." I laughed. She was right. We sat together. We ate toast. We drank tea. It took maybe 10 minutes. Nothing special happened, but after she died, those 10-minute breakfasts became some of my favorite memories. That taught me not to underestimate ordinary time. 10 quiet minutes with someone can become important many years later. Now, when I have a busy morning, I try to slow down at least once. Maybe not for 10 minutes, maybe only for 1. But I remember her table.
Emma is the last to speak.
My final memory is about a window too. When I was small, my room had a window that looked toward a tree. Every morning I could see the same bird sitting on one branch. I thought it was the same bird every day. I even gave it a name. I called it Blue. I do not know why. It was not blue. One summer morning, the bird was gone. I waited. It did not return that day, or the next day. As a child, I felt strangely sad. Years later, I remembered that bird. Of course, it had not belonged to me. It had only shared the same view for a little while. I think people can be like that too. Some people stay for many years. Some people stay for a season. Some people stay for only one conversation. But that does not make the moment less real. We do not have to keep everything forever for it to matter.
The 5 friends listen to Emma in silence. The thought remains with them. The fire has almost gone. The lake is dark and quiet. Nobody wants to break the mood. Then Bob speaks softly.
I think we have said enough for one night.
Yes.
Definitely.
Tomorrow we can tell more stories.
Tomorrow.
And with that one word, the evening finally begins to end. The friends stand slowly. They do not hurry. The chairs move gently over the ground. The last cups are packed away. The blankets are folded. The remaining food is placed safely inside the bags. Daniel looks at the fire one last time. A small orange light moves across the wood. Then it fades. The lake is still. The forest is still. The night is deep. And somewhere above the trees, the stars continue to move across the sky. This is the kind of night that does not need a perfect ending. It simply becomes quieter and quieter. The conversation becomes softer. The fire becomes smaller. The distance between one thought and the next becomes longer. And maybe that is a good place for your mind to be too. You can let today's plans rest. You can let tomorrow wait. For now, you can simply listen. The lake is calm. The forest is calm. The night is calm. Take a slow breath. Let it go. Another slow breath. Let your body become heavy. Let the words become softer. There is no test tonight. There is no need to remember everything. Just listen. English can become familiar through repetition, through stories, and through quiet moments like this one. So let the final words stay simple. The friends are resting. The fire is out. The lake is quiet. The night is safe. And now it is your turn to rest. Good night. Sleep well, EOF. There is still a little time before the night becomes completely silent. The friends are tired now, but each of them remembers one final thought.
My final thought is simple. For a long time, I thought a good life meant having exciting stories. But now I think a good life is having enough ordinary moments that you can remember with a smile, a morning coffee, a walk after work, a joke with a friend, a quiet evening near the water. Those moments may look small while they are happening. Years later, they can become the moments you miss the most.
Bob looks at the dark lake.
I think I agree. Lily takes a slow breath. My final thought is about waiting. Sometimes we are always waiting for the next thing, the next weekend, the next trip, the next holiday, the next job, the next big change. But when we are always waiting, we can miss the day we are already living. Tonight is a good example. Nothing huge happened. We sat near a fire and talked, but I think I will remember this night.
Mike smiles.
My final thought is that people are often kinder than we expect. We remember the rude person. We remember the difficult conversation. We remember the mistake. But there are also many quiet acts of kindness that never become stories. Someone holds a door. Someone gives directions. Someone sends a message at the right time. Someone asks, "Are you okay?" Small things, but small things can change a day.
Daniel looks at the almost dark fire.
My final thought is about learning. You do not have to become good at something immediately. You can speak bad English today. You can forget a word. You can make a mistake. You can feel slow, and you can still be learning. The important thing is not perfection. It is continuing. One word, one sentence, one story, one more day. That is enough.
Emma listens, then speaks quietly.
And my final thought is about rest. Rest is not wasted time. Sometimes the mind needs silence before it can learn again. Sometimes you need sleep before a problem becomes simple. Sometimes you need a quiet evening before you understand what you really feel. So I think it is okay to stop. Not forever, just for tonight.
No one adds anything after that. They have said enough. The final pieces of wood in the fire are glowing softly. The lake is almost completely dark. Above the trees, the sky is clear. The friends begin walking back toward their sleeping place. Their steps are slow. Their voices are quiet. They do not need to fill the silence anymore. And perhaps that is where we can leave the night, not with a dramatic ending, not with a mystery that needs to be solved, not with another lesson to memorize, just with a quiet feeling. You listened. You heard simple English. You heard stories told slowly and naturally. And now you can let the words disappear. Tomorrow, more words will come, more conversations, more stories, more chances to learn. But tonight, you can rest. The fire is gone. The lake is still. The forest is sleeping. And the friends are finally quiet. Take a slow breath. Let it out slowly. Relax your shoulders. Relax your hands. Let your eyes become heavy. You do not need to do anything else. Good night. Sleep well, EOF. Before the very last goodbye, let us stay beside the lake for just a little longer. Imagine the fire is only a soft red glow now. Imagine the air is cool against your face. Imagine the water moving slowly in the dark. There is nothing urgent here. The friends are safe. The day is finished. The stories are finished. For a few moments there is only breathing and the quiet sound of the forest. This is also part of learning. You do not always need a new lesson. Sometimes you only need to hear familiar words again and again until they stop feeling difficult. Listen to simple words like quiet, warm, dark, water, fire, friend, night, rest, and tomorrow. Let them pass through your mind naturally. You can learn in the same way you learn a song. First, the sound feels new. Then it becomes familiar. And one day you understand it without thinking about every word. Tonight, you can simply listen. And tomorrow when you wake up, you can remember one sentence from this night. Maybe you will remember that a small kindness can change a day. Maybe you will remember that mistakes are part of learning. Maybe you will remember that quiet moments are important too. Or maybe you will remember nothing at all. That is okay. Sleep is more important now. The last red light disappears from the fire. The lake becomes completely dark. The forest is quiet, and the night continues. If you are listening to this story before sleep, there is nothing else you need to do now. You do not need to remember every word. You do not need to understand every sentence. Just keep listening. Let the English become familiar. Let the voices become quiet, background sound. Tonight, you listen to 5 friends tell 5 different kinds of stories. A funny story about trying something new. A quiet story about travel and mystery. A story about a very bad suitcase. A story about learning through mistakes. And a slightly mysterious story about a lake, a cabin, and a voice in the dark. But perhaps the most important story is your own. Tomorrow, you may have a normal day. You may go to work. You may study. You may meet people. You may make mistakes. You may laugh. And one day those ordinary moments can become your favorite stories. So for now, let the day become smaller. The room is quiet. The light is low. Your eyes are getting heavier. Take a slow breath. And another. There is nowhere you need to go right now. You can simply rest. The forest is quiet. The lake is still. The fire is almost gone. And somewhere in the dark, 5 friends are getting ready for sleep. Good night, and sleep well. And before you fall asleep, one small reminder. Subscribe to the channel and watch the next videos when you have time. Keep learning English with Fly Talk I, one calm story at a time. You do not have to learn everything tonight. Just keep listening, keep practicing, and let English become a natural part of your day.